Miss Yarroda Bersi.
Ave Satanas! Hail Satan! Hail Satan! Hail Satan!
Greetings, heathens. Welcome to Hail Satan. This is a podcast exploring Satanism, culture, and life in general through the eyes of modern Satanists. I'm going to be your host. My name is Joseph Rose. I'm a member of the Satanic Temple and founder of a group called Satanic Delco. We are located in southeastern Pennsylvania, so if you live in or around Delaware County, Pennsylvania, and you feel aligned with the Satanic Temple, by all means, come knock on our door. I think you'll find that we're a pretty welcoming bunch. Today on the show, we've got a very special guest. Author and Satanic Temple organizer Shiva Honey will be on the show in just a bit to talk about rituals and to tell us about what she's been working on recently. Rituals are a pretty interesting topic, and not one that I can really speak about with any sense of authority or expertise. I've been a part of a couple of rituals, which is to say I was in attendance at a couple of rituals. I did not play any role beyond that, but I found them to be enjoyable. They were fun, certainly empowering, and enjoyable overall. My opinion has changed a bit over time concerning rituals. In the past, at some point, I was a little more skeptical of rituals because I'm the kind of guy that is not into any supernatural funny business. I don't buy into the woo. I don't rub a crystal. I don't put my faith in much of anything other than science and common sense. And so rituals to me came with a little bit of baggage when, you allow all of the ideas that we've gathered over the years through pop culture and the depiction of satanic rituals in particular, usually focused on some sort of evil doing and all of that. But of course we know that's not the case. In fact, I'm recording this episode here in late October of 2020, and on Halloween night, I will be part of a ritual of my own with some small groups of Satanist friends, and honestly, I'm really looking forward to it. I hope it will be an experience that is positive for everyone involved and offers them some liberation and empowerment. So we will get to some ritual talk with Shiva Honey in just a little bit. Before I forget, let me just do a little housekeeping business here. We've got one brand new patron that has joined the show through our Patreon page. Todd F. has joined us. Todd, thank you very much, sir. I can't tell you how much I appreciate your support. Thank you very, very much, Todd. We've got a couple messages from listeners that I'd like to read. Let's see here. We've got one from Lantha the Wizard. I hope I'm saying that right. Hey, I just wanted to say thank you. I'm super new to the Satanic Temple, and they don't have any chapters in Australia, so I wasn't sure where to learn. It almost made me give up on it because it seemed like such a huge, daunting thing, but I asked about it online, and someone told me about your podcast. It's helping me learn without going from site to site with vague questions I don't know how to properly ask. So thank you. Thank you, Lantha the Wizard. And how fun is that, getting a message from a listener all the way in Australia? That's pretty exciting. I'll read just one more. I've got one from Atticus W. I love your show and content so far. I look forward to each new episode. I've always been a Satanist as far as the 7 tenets are concerned, but I didn't discover TST until 2018. I've carried my membership card daily since then. I'm an officer at a career fire department in, I will leave out your location. I'm not out as a Satanist, as it could jeopardize my job in a very real way. It's illegal, but I've seen it happen for less. Keep up the great work. I look forward to hearing more each week. Atticus, thank you very much. And that is unfortunate that you're in a position where you can't be out as a Satanist. That's always a bummer to me when I hear stories about people that have to keep that part of themselves undercover from their friends or family or place of employment or any situation like that. I've been in situations where you feel like you have to hide a part of yourself, and it is a very uncomfortable weight to carry around. So I do relate, and I hope one day that you're able to free yourself from that. But thank you for listening, and thank you for writing in very much, Atticus. One last thing before I get to my interview with Shiva Honey, I would like all of you to take just a moment to stop by hailsatanpodcast.com. On the website, you'll find links to all of our social media platforms. It would be great if you would link up with us on there. You'll also find a form to send us an email, which I encourage you to do. I love hearing your feedback on the show, and I love sharing your stories of how you found Satanism and what Satanism means to you, or anything else you'd like to share. And of course, there's a link on there to join up with our Patreon account. You'll get some bonus content there. You'll get discounts on some merch and all kinds of other fun things. And it's the most direct way to support the show if you do enjoy the content that I'm creating. So without further ado, let me get to my interview with the fantastic Shiva Honey. I am now joined by a very special guest. She's the author of The Devils Tome, a book of modern satanic ritual, and the creator of the Devil's Deck, Miss Shiva Honey. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate your time.
It's my pleasure.
So if it's all right, I thought we might back up and start at the beginning. Which
Sure.
came first for you, Satanism or rituals?
Ritual, I think, really came first for me. I grew up in a pretty evangelical Christian home and was a pretty serious Christian for my youth because there wasn't really any other choice.
Sure.
So, but something that stuck with me that I really enjoyed was the sort of inner journey that even that religion would give me. The rituals that came with it made me feel like I had some control over my life and brought some sort of beauty, I guess, to my practice. So even when I was Christian, I enjoyed the aspect of ritual, whether it was prayer or, just getting together with other people to talk about issues and try to work on things. So I think that carried with me after I left Christianity. But I really seriously got into practicing ritual and creating my own probably about 10 years ago. And that was before I identified as a Satanist. So by that time, I had just left the religion of my childhood. That also coincided with me getting out of separating from really abusive family. So I was kind of in a tailspin of what do I do now? And also having this whole new world that was opened up to me because I was no longer significantly judged or discouraged from pursuing other sort of modes of knowledge. So I got early into, getting more familiar with religions from around the world, the occult. And I started creating my own rituals prior to even becoming a Satanist and really found that they were helpful in having me being able to center myself, me being able to start processing some of the healing that I had to do. I found out around a little bit after that I was also diagnosed with PTSD. So rituals started to play a really important part in me just feeling grounded and empowered as an individual. So once I became a Satanist, though, that just kind of translated further into my practice and I got to develop it at a deeper level. So the interest has been there for a long time, but I feel like becoming a Satanist really was a way for me to dig so much deeper into myself and use it in a whole new way almost.
Needless to say, you found that your ritual practice has brought a significant benefit to your life.
Yeah, definitely. I think that, like I said, it came at a very good time. Like I said, I was familiar with ritual from my childhood and I enjoyed some aspects of it, but it really came to me at a time when I needed to do a lot of inner work and really find direction. And luckily it was there and has since like become such an important part of my own personal life. So yeah, it's been huge for me.
So you'd already sort of left your primary religious background and found rituals and bits of other religions. How did Satanism first really appear on your radar?
Yeah, I mean, I knew about Satanism. I was always kind of fascinated with the occult growing up, but I grew up in a home, like, I think there was maybe one book on astrology that my mom had left over from the 70s. She was pretty into like New Age sort of mysticism and that sort of thing before she met my stepdad, who was, super Southern Baptist. And once that happened, everything was wiped away and we were all evangelical at that point. So, I found like an astrology book when I was a kid in the house and I'd look at that. And then I got into, I was like, the craft came out when I was a kid and like, there were all these ideas about things that I wanted to pursue, but was so scared because of both the, punishment for my family, but also because there's all this superstition around ritual practice.
Sure.
So despite the fact that I was interested, I never really had a chance to pursue anything until I was an adult. And, but by that time I just started exploring, looking around, and I found Satanism when I was a teenager, the Church of Satan. I read the Satanic Bible, but it was more of a sort of like, look at these people who don't, like, it was more of an I'm Christian and they're Satanists, so let me read this thing. You know what I mean? And thinking it's weird or whatever.
Yeah.
But it was still kind of fascinating. And there were aspects of it that I agreed with. And there was stuff that I didn't agree with. But then right around the time when the Satanic Temple got started, I think around 2013, I remember I have a very vivid memory of like reading about the pink mass and thinking about how funny it was and how interesting it was and how poignant the sort of performative action was. And it reminded me of all these protest movements that I really loved from like the 60s, like the Yippie movement and Abby Hoffman and, this theatrical sort of way of poking fun at these corrupt systems and that sort of thing. So that I thought that was really clever. And then from that point, the first chapter of the Satanic Temple, TST Detroit, started to form in the fall of 2014. And I got invited to a get-together by a friend of mine, Michael Mars, who we'd been performing together and doing some ritual events together prior to becoming part of TST. So he invited me out and we all went to a haunted house. And then I just got together with the gang and we started planning events and actions, and the rest is kind of history. So 2014 was when it really came in.
And
for me.
Right there with your friend, that was sort of your introduction to becoming a member with the Satanic Temple? Yeah.
It was, so many things back then. The temple was kind of an idea.
Right.
So we were the first chapter. So there were so many things that weren't really set in stone, but that was when my mind really turned on to like, this is cool. I met up with those guys and hung out, and then we had a meeting afterward. And we started talking about, some things that were happening on a legislative level that we didn't agree with. RFRA, a lot of these theocratic practices that we had a problem with. And we started talking about different sorts of actions we could take. And the fall is when we came to the idea about doing the big snaketivity action of 2014. So as soon as I sat down with people and found that we all kind of came from a similar place, and these people were like ready to do something cool, I was like, all right, I'm in. So philosophically, the principles, the tenets of the religion really gelled with my own values. And then, aesthetically, it made sense. And the sort of actions that we wanted to take also just made a lot of sense to me and really spoke to that interest that I had in, theatrical protest and speaking out against tyranny and that sort of thing.
Gotcha. So the activism part of it was just as much a draw as anything else?
Yeah, totally. And I think like the early version of TST was very activist oriented. I mean, we still are. We do less, I think, public protests now, but That was huge for me. Yeah, I actually had been quite burned out on the activist scene. By that time, I was like in my mid-20s, and I had been super active in college, and then I got really burned out. I think people just go through cycles naturally with if people are interested in activism, that just happens. So I was at that time when I was really disillusioned. I had to, again, like pull back to kind of take care of myself for a while. And then I met up with the folks from TST, and I was like, all right, now it's time to get back into this world. And now we can actually, I felt like there was a way to be heard and do something that was really fun and interesting and different. And so I was like, I was all aboard.
I swear I've heard or maybe read somewhere where you mentioned that in your early days of being involved with the Satanic Temple, you felt a need to maybe hide your ritual practice. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think, like when I first joined the temple in 2014, there wasn't a lot of like guidance in general about what we should be doing. Like I was actually one of the founding members of the National Council, and there wasn't a lot of guidance about how we should be organizing or what we should be doing or what was part of the religion and what wasn't. I think a lot of that's been articulated in the last couple of years from a more general perspective. But yeah, I mean, there wasn't a lot of guidance as to whether or not like how accepted ritual was. I think there was a lot of people that were still kind of confused when TST came around as to whether it was theistic or non-theistic. And, there's a lot of baggage that comes with ritual. So there's a lot of, ties to supernaturalism. There's a lot of trauma that many people who have become atheists or, Satanists had endured at the hands of, religion and religious ritual over the years. So it was something that I was a little bit nervous to get involved with publicly or speak about publicly, I suppose, because I just didn't want to step on any toes. I was like, I want to represent the religion in the right way. And I remember speaking about practicing tarot, for instance. And at that time, I have Serpentina, which is my satanic boutique. And I also do stuff that's more like just kind of like middle of the road ritual for another business of mine called the Pinnacle Path. And at that point I was reading tarot, which I still do, obviously, but I was doing tarot and making ritual products and that sort of thing. And I remember, like, I just heard people sent me screenshots of people in TST, like, talking shit about me for doing ritual and tarot. And then I remember getting on the topic on the now defunct official forum and getting attacked by a couple people for practicing tarot. So I think that there were a lot of, like, really hard atheists, who didn't understand the nuance of ritual maybe when TST got started. Yeah. And so I just kind of backed off from like speaking about it publicly. But then I got invited by Malcolm, one of the co-founders of TST, to come to Salem HQ in 2017 to create and lead the first Black Mass ritual at headquarters. And so from then on, I started to feel more confident. And, I wasn't given a lot of guidance as to like what we should be doing or anything. It was like, okay, like, we trust you, come figure it out. So at that point, I started to kind of get the vibe that like, okay, ritual is becoming, more accepted. The co-founders are into the fact that I'm doing ritual. Like, let's, bring more light to this topic. But it wasn't really until 2019, even after having been the official kind of like ritual coordinator for TST National, that I felt, that I released the intention of releasing the book and started talking more openly about my practice and that sort of thing. So it took a lot of years for me to be confident enough to talk about it. And now I see this huge shift since the book has come out where people are seeing a lot of value in it. And I think the nuance is more understood now. And, I think it's really, really cool to see.
That's great that they gave you such freedom, I guess, right from the beginning there.
Yeah, I mean, it took some years. I think, yeah, I can't speak for the co-founders, but I do think, there was just like a lot that we had to work out. I think before we made any sort of like public declarations or whatever else. I think we're such a young religion and we're all just kind of trying to figure out where to go. So you can imagine the first couple of years were really kind of confusing. And now I think we're starting to get a better idea of different ways that we can practice and that sort of thing, but it's an ever evolving process.
Do you feel any conflict whatsoever between, your ritual practice generally when combined with what we know about TST's anti-supernatural stance?
Yeah, no, I don't at all. I talk about this in my book a little bit. In fact, I believe it's the first chapter is all dedicated to like the scientific evidence of the benefit of ritual. So ritual is something that's been practiced throughout since the dawn of humanity as a way to, I think, even unconsciously, do inner healing work and empowerment, as well as, bring groups together in a meaningful way. So it's something we've been doing as a species forever. And now that there are a number of different scholars that are actually looking into trying to understand the tangible benefits of ritual and how how this actually works inside of our bodies and that sort of thing. So one of the things that I did in my book is I actually discussed a couple of recent journal articles that talk about the benefits of ritual. You don't have to benefit from ritual. You don't have to have any sort of supernatural belief. You don't have to, ascribe to any particular religion. Just the act of performing a ritual in itself can do things to help alleviate grief, to make you feel more empowered, to help you deal with anxiety. These are all things that I find in my own practice. I don't have a pantheon that I'm praying to. I don't have any supernatural association. In fact, ritual, to me, it's something that is able to provide grounding. It gives me time to help, understand where I am, what my needs are, what my desires are, and essentially to kind of like plan for the future. And it's been something that I found as a Satanist is like essential to my practice. So being a Satanist, I like to think of, Satanism as a religion that promotes inner understanding, that promotes action, that promotes you being in control of your own life. Despite what may have happened, what the external world expects, it's a way for you to be really centered in yourself and your needs. And it can be a philosophy from which you go on to make big changes in your life that are true to yourself. So for me, my ritual practice helps me tune into that ability to kind of mold and change my life as I like, to help move on from things that have been unhealthy for me, to help imagine a future that, may have been unimaginable to me like 20 years ago as a kid. For me, it's been absolutely instrumental in me being able to change my life and really mold it now into something that I really enjoy. I went from, having a life that was okay, but like I endured a lot of abuse and stuff growing up. So it was something that always had a shadow around it that was difficult, and the shadow of other people's expectations. To me, being able to practice ritual in this way has been able to provide, inner healing to help me move past those things, and also just help me envision a life that's so different from what I would have had I stuck with my old religion or perhaps not practiced,
Yeah, for sure. A lot of people probably practice some form of ritual, whether or not they ever thought to put it in that category. I think it's maybe a pretty natural behavior that people get into.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I give it the example of one of my most practiced rituals just being like, I think I'm type A. So just having like a list every day of like what I want to accomplish, what the long-term goals are, things that I want to get done. This kind of goes back from, I have a ritual called the Sight. That's like a big, sort of like a vision boarding, if you're familiar with that concept, ritual, where you can do it like on a quarterly basis, or I do it at least annually, where I'm like, okay, so here's where I would like to be in like 5 or 10 years. And I give myself a day to just like focus on that, different aspects of my life, things I want to accomplish. And then I'll say like, okay, well, in a year, these are the steps I can take in a year to kind of get to that place. So I'll have like 2 of these boards basically together. And that kind of provides the guidance for these like weekly, monthly, daily sort of tasks I have. So yeah, for me, like even just the act of like writing out things that I have to do to kind of like follow these bigger dreams or goals that I have, and being able to like articulate them in a way that's outside of my mind is both very relaxing and empowering, and helps me like move more toward what I need to be doing.
That's really great. You've written a whole book on rituals out there, the Devils Tome. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that and the new companion deck that you've created.
Sure. So I decided, after, again, not having spoken up too much for the first couple of years in TST, I decided last year that it would be really cool to produce a book of rituals for the Satanic community, something that was distinct from the stuff that the Church of Satan has put out and other authors since have put out. So I put together a book called The Devils Tome, a book of modern satanic ritual. It is a book that is made of several parts. The first part discusses the science behind ritual and just kind of gives you a place from which to understand like my philosophy on the practice. It has a section on just a brief section about my background and how I came to my ritual practice. It has a number of solo rituals that I've created and used. And then it has group rituals that I put together for the Satanic Temple. So it documents the rituals that I did at the Satanic Temple headquarters, as well as some that I've done with like the Satanic Temple, Friends of Satanic Temple Detroit and Satanic Temple West Michigan. And that section, it's cool too, because I actually provide like a pretty, usually before each ritual too, I'll just give you background on how I came to creating those rituals. I also include feedback from people who are partners in the creation of those rituals. I provide some thoughts on like best practices when it comes to group ritual creation, and all that good stuff. So it's got a little bit of everything in it. And the most important thing I think that the book does too is it's a place to jump off from. I think it's provided a lot of people the permission to just go off and pursue their own practice. Like I think one of the most important messages of the book is that, you're not supposed to go into this book and like do the rituals rotely that I wrote. You can, of course, if you want to, but the idea is to inspire people to be able to create their own practice and empower themselves in whatever ways they want. So.
And more recently, you've created the Devil's Deck.
Yes, and then I created the Devil's Deck. So that's my newest project. I'm thinking of the Devils Tome almost as a cycle. So at next, probably close to the middle of next year, the cycle will be complete. So I've got the book, then I've got the tome, the Devil's Deck rather, which is a companion to the Devil's Tome. So I don't think I've spoke about this yet, or maybe I have slightly. I've practiced tarot a lot, and I found that it is a tool that has helped. Just like ritual, it is a ritual in itself, but has given me a lot of insight and empowerment over the years. And so I decided to create not a full tarot deck, but more of an oracle deck, I guess is the closest thing you could compare it to for Satanists. So I'm putting together a 30 card ritual deck, basically is what I'm calling it, that corresponds with the tome. So a number of the cards, what I call the ceremonial cards, when you pull them, immediately it'll tell you to perform a ritual in the book or take that sort of ritual as inspiration for your practice. And then there are some additional cards that are more general, the illumination cards that just talk about different concepts, sort of like inner journey work that you can do as a Satanist when you pull those cards. So I think it's cool. It's like, it's kind of its own thing. I don't think anyone else has ever done a ritual deck before, but it also includes some artwork from me, and it includes artwork from Lucian, the co-founder who also did illustrations for the Devil's Tome, as well as Alexander Corey, who is another who also did illustrations for the Devil's Tome. So Great. It should be pretty cool. I'm super excited. I'm working with a couple of different companies for printing now. It's almost like a showpiece. In addition to being a tool, it's going to be gilded. Everything's going to be super high quality. I've spent the last couple of months, putting together this whole thing, and I'm super, super excited for it to come out.
Yeah, I was very excited as soon as I saw the images of the deck. I don't know if you're familiar with the process, but I'm a letterpress printer.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And when I saw the images and the gold and everything, I was freaking out. I was so jealous. I was like, I wish I created this thing.
Oh, that's so cool. Well, you can do something too. That's amazing that you're a printer. That's so cool.
Yeah, it's fun. If someone out there is new and has an interest in rituals, is there a specific one or a certain type of ritual that might be a good introduction for them? Yeah,
I think that the site is a good ritual to start out with. So I referenced that one a bit earlier. Yeah. That one really it's pretty simple. You don't need a lot of, materials to do it. And I think it just provides like a good grounding experience for other types of rituals to come. Because it does essentially, I think it kind of encompasses the purpose of so many different rituals, which is just to understand your own needs and then act on them. So the site ritual is in the book, and it's actually the sigil for the site ritual is the one that's on the card deck. But basically it's again like a vision boarding ritual. So with this ritual, all you really need is like pen and paper. You can use magazines if you want or whatever, but you just sit down with yourself and make just kind of like let go of preconceived notions of what you should be doing, let go of external pressures of, friends, family, etc. And you just sit with yourself for a while and think about what you would like to accomplish, what you would like to experience, just essentially like what your desires are. And then you take whatever you find and then you write it down. You can write down words, you can draw pictures, you can clip photos from a magazine and put them on the vision board. But to me, that one is pretty simple, and it gives you a good place to do the rest of your work. It's almost like the first ritual I would recommend before everybody digs into the rest of the book, because I think it provides a foundation for the work that you'll be doing, in the future. And it's something that you can revisit as long as you'd like. And I think for me, I think a lot of my initial work revolved around rituals like that. I think it's so powerful just to be able to sit with yourself and really like tune out all the extra noise and focus on what you want and what you need.
Now, in the book, you mentioned you have a collection of solo rituals in there as well as group rituals?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm trying to remember how many now. I think it's 14 or 15 solo rituals. So those rituals are, I do a little bit of an introduction and talk about my solo ritual practice and give people basically, again, giving people the permission to create their own rituals, giving people the ability to just some tips on like how to do a successful ritual and that sort of thing. And then I lay out, I think it's 14 or 15 individual rituals that for different purposes that people can perform. So I have some for like the first ritual actually might be the most intense ritual of all of them, but that's the devotion ritual for self-love. I have rituals for finding love, self-love, healing heartbreak, separating from toxic people or ideas that you have, healing from heartbreak, protection sort of rituals for visioning or manifestation, and then also holiday rituals in that section.
That's really great. The holiday rituals. Yeah. Yeah. I wasn't sure of ritual at first. I didn't know what kind of role that could or would play for me personally. But a little while back, I was able to actually attend a couple. And by the time I left that night, my mind was kind of changed or solidified. And I felt that it was really empowering and also just fun. And I saw the possibilities, I guess, that ritual could bring.
Yeah. And that's the thing too. It's one of those things. Definitely nobody has to practice it to be a Satanist. This isn't something that you can be a valid Satanist and not practice ritual. It's all up to personal preference, but it's like one of those tools in the toolbox, And I think that a lot of people, if they were to give it some serious consideration and time, can find it useful,
I think so too. So where can people find all about your book and the Devil's Deck and everything that you're up to?
You can go to serpentina.com, and on that website I have copies, like paperback copies and hardcover copies of the Devils Tome. I've also got it on ebook on all of the major ebook sellers. Unfortunately, well, not really unfortunately, the book, as you can imagine, as a printer, the book costs a lot of money to print because it's like in color and it's gilded. So I haven't had like Amazon or any of those folks like print my books for me because they're too expensive. Right. So the only place to get a physical copy right now is on my site, or you can go to pussifer.com, Maynard's store. They've been like super supportive. We were supposed to do a book release at that store last year or this past couple months, but the pandemic happened.
Of course.
Also TST just has bought a ton of my books, so they're going to be at the TST store as well soon, and probably in about a couple weeks. So that's awesome. But yeah, you can get a whole bunch of free rituals as well as check out the book on my website. And I also have my Satanic boutique there, so I make candles and incense and oils and ritual kits too, that you can check out. You can also find a link on that site to the Indiegogo campaign for the Devil's Deck. So this printing is only 666 copies. Each of them will be signed by me. And we've hit our funding goal, which is awesome. But we still have some copies left, so that will, I think, end on November 1st. So if you're interested in the deck, try to get in early to make sure you get a copy. And just check out my site or search the Devil's Deck on Indiegogo, and you should be able to find it.
Cool. And I will definitely include all of the relevant links and everything in the podcast notes and our social media and everything. Shiva, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
You got it. Have a good one.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, guys, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Shiva as much as I did. That's about all I've got for you this time. Once again, please drop by hailsatanpodcast.com, link up with us on social media, and do your best to share the podcast with a friend or something. Until next time, Hail Satan.
Snowlaven och skytten efter. I bor vi i Sverige.